It's very expensive. And this is Aggie.
You need to be able to breathe. It's almost like,
Commissioners Court of Brazos County will meet regular session on February 24th, 10 a.m. Commissioners Courtroom, County Administration Building, 200 South Texas Avenue, Suite 106. First item on the agenda is invocation, pledge of allegiance to the U.S. and Texas flag. Commissioner Brown will lead this.
Thank you, Judge. Philippians 2:3 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." Heavenly Father, we recognize the fact that the five of us are up here because of your grace. And may we also recognize that we're responsible to you and we're responsible to the people that we serve. May you give us wisdom and understanding in all that we do today, and everything that we do be to your glory. For it's in your name I pray. Amen.
amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Second item on the agenda is call for citizens' input and/or concerns, and we've got some that want to speak. Karen Simpson.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Morning.
Hi.
Karen Simpson, Precinct 1. The following is the testimony of Walter C. Doherty, Senior Lecturer Emeritus at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Texas A&M, for the public hearing by the Texas Secretary of State on the Hart InterCivic Verity Vanguard voting system on December 20th, 2025. To be approved for use in Texas, voting systems must fully comply with all federal, state, and Texas Secretary of State requirements. The Hart InterCivic Verity Vanguard 1.0 voting system submitted to the Secretary fatally fails to do so on all three counts, and therefore cannot be approved for use in Texas. Federal requirements. The voting system may not be used in Texas without certification by the Election Assistance Commission, or EAC. In July, the EAC certified the Hart InterCivic Verity Vanguard 1.0 voting system. The certification specifies the component software version numbers which were approved. However, the voting system which Hart InterCivic submitted to the Secretary for the examination and possible approval was altered and had different software versions than what the EAC certified. Since the voting system was not EAC certified, it fails to meet the federal requirement. Therefore, this examination is null and void, and the Hart InterCivic Verity Vanguard 1.0 voting system must be disapproved for use in Texas. State requirements. Texas law states a voting system may not be used in Texas unless the system is safe from fraudulent or unauthorized manipulation. Such manipulation did occur, as just described, and was not detected. This demonstrates that the software validation process is defective. The Secretary's prescribed procedures for detecting fraudulent or unauthorized manipulation, including software hash validation that verifies notifiable alteration. Since the hash validation did not detect the SQL server had been altered, this leads to the conclusion that it was not included in the software hash validation of this voting system, an egregious omission. The Texas Secretary of State requirements, the SOS website addresses network capability as follows. In section 2.0, quote, 2.1, quote, in order to be certified in Texas, the machines cannot even have the capability of connecting to the internet, end quote. The two EAC certified HP computer workstation models on Vanguard each contain one or more network interface controllers with one or more RJ45 network jacks plainly visible in the rear of the computer, showing it does indeed have the capability to connect to the internet, making it uncertifiable in Texas because of this SOS requirement. In conclusion, to be approved for use in Texas, the voting system must fully comply with all federal, state, and Texas Secretary of State requirements. The Hart InterCivic Verity Vanguard 1.0 voting system submitted to the Secretary fatally fails to do so on all 3 counts, and therefore cannot be approved in Texas. Dr. Doherty repeated this testimony last night on Cause of America Call. These are the machines that are in use today.
Okay, thank you. Kathy Vins.
Kathy Vians, Precinct 4. I think it's appropriate for me to reread a statement I made in January 24th of 2025 to this court regarding the Roy Kelly parking garage, which is again on the agenda today. During the previous week's Commissioner Court hearing, I inquired about Agenda Item 10, the parking garage. 4 out of 5 members of this court voted in favor of leasing back the building from the Transit District for $1 per year. The net impact of the transaction goes far beyond a $1 yearly lease. At the time of the vote, you had not asked for or received any details regarding the financial impact of this contract. Indeed, no one in this court was able to answer the question of what the current contract with the Brazos Transit District stipulates, in spite of the fact that Judge Peters is the chairman of the Transit District, which I assume you still are. This body is responsible for making financial commitments each and every week. Capital improvement projects for 2026 are already being submitted to this court. The lack of diligence on and effort regarding the financial impact of your decisions is of grave concern. My fear is that this lack of diligence and financial analysis will be just one reason you'll vote to raise our property taxes. I'm asking this court for the following issues to be addressed in the following week's court. Now that the court has voted for the parking garage property to revert to the county ownership, please provide a financial pro forma analysis of your vote last week so we, the people, can see what's in it. Proposal of a public hearing on the East Loop project. Well, this doesn't revolve. The reason I'm bringing it up today is that there have been a number of actions in this court that reflect well over $1 million over the course of the next 20 years, which is the length of the contract that was lowered. We had another 20 years that the Transit District would have financial responsibility, and we shortened that by 20 years. So we have taken on the debt for the Transit District, 20 years worth, without any consideration last year when you voted to take on that lease back, without any consideration of the financial impact on this county. And I think that's a matter of transparency. I think at the time I asked for the financial evidence of the consequences of taking that property back, and nobody had an answer for me. I don't think any of this has ever been looked at again. So I'm sure when you talk about the parking garage today, I'll be speaking again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kyle Greenwood.
Good morning, Judge, members of the court. Kyle Greenwood, Precinct 2. When last I was here, I spoke about the homestead tax exemption on January 27th. Asked the court to consider implementation of that for the county. The same day, I also submitted an open records request with the following, and I'll read this. I asked for any and all records pertaining to discussion or consideration of implementing a homestead exemption pursuant to Texas Tax Code 11.13N by the Commissioner Court at any time after May 1st of 2022. This will include any formal requests made by citizens or commissioners, as well as any research performed relevant to evaluation of the implications of implementation, such as fiscal assessments or analyses. On the 17th of February, I received an invoice from the county asking me to pay for the research necessary, which I did, which was this past Friday. I paid the $15 bill. Yesterday, I received the documents responsive to that request, and they consist of, one, a letter from Dana Horton to a couple looking for a veterans homestead exemption, which really wasn't what I was looking for, and two, the letter that I'd submitted to the court. while I find this somewhat amusing, it confirms to me that there has not been any discussion about this on the court. So I renew my call for the court to consider implementing a homestead exemption. As I've been out and about the county, tax relief is a big issue that folks want to talk about. And so as the county is now in the budget process, and as per the statute, July would be the deadline to make a decision whether or not to implement that for the coming fiscal year, I formally again request that the county consider holding a public workshop to discuss this. Now, I want to stop for just a second and say I appreciated the workshop this morning on the abatements, though there was a robust exchange and not everything that was said from the dais was appreciated by those in the audience. Regardless, I think it was extremely productive and showed the court's willingness to engage in discussion with the community. I ask that we have a similar discussion just like that on homestead exemption. So, I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Christine Schimick?
Schimick, Precinct 2. Let me adjust this a little bit. I haven't been here for 2 weeks, and when I came, a month ago, the clock was started early, so I had some questions about, about the SOP for clock. Okay, so the previously established protocol for this court was 1 speaker gets the podium, 2 speaker gives name and precinct, 3 the clock starts and the speaker begins the input time, and then the speaker monitors time at the podium, the mic mutes at the end. The procedure is fine, but I'd like to know if that's when the time actually starts. I had something like 20 seconds run off the clock on one of the times that I spoke before I even said anything while I was fixing the mic. So I would like to know if there's going to be a standard protocol and if that's going to be adhered to each time. It just helps with being familiar with the process. Okay, my second input is about the voting box in general. Voting machine software, Dr. Doty spoke before the Secretary of State about the software. He is still on the same unwavering professional opinion about that software. He has spoken before this court, yet the questions continue to be asked. Does this court have a plan for answering those questions or addressing the issues raised by Dr. Doty? Does this include what they call receipts or evidence that the court's claims of no problem for voting machines is actually supportive of the claim? I am trained in both qualitative and quantitative research methodologies by highly certified experts in the field, and I have a framework for understanding this. I'll be glad to look at any data that is released. Voter cleanup, this is not a partisan issue. Fred Medina stood at this podium 2 weeks ago and said, if there are dead people on the voter rolls, they should probably be removed. Can people expect that the voter rolls will be certified as clean, meaning no dead people and no ineligible voters? And again, will the receipts or the evidence be provided? My dad was career military. He took orders for over 20 years. When he retired, he gave orders. And I'm going to explain this. Dad would call his congressman, and at some point in that conversation, he would say, this is not a request, that is an order. As teenagers, we just absolutely cringed when he picked up the landline and his congressmen all knew him by first name. They knew it was Frank from El Campo. And I'm wondering, when did the people become such cowards that we ask for clean voter rolls and then hope and post on social media discussions with the hope that our elected representatives will allow this fundamental right? Okay, my dad was, he was what they call a sharpshooter. And so he saw combat. His brothers both saw combat. His dad saw combat. My dad's oldest brother actually covered Patton's flank through Italy. What has happened to us? These men gave their lives. They gave their lives so that we could have these freedoms. And what has happened to us that we were reduced to begging for it on social media while no one does anything. So I implore folks who are not getting involved, get involved, participate. This is the only way that we can solve these problems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Cindy Wiley.
Morning, Cindy Wiley, Precinct 1. Hallelujah. Somebody else is talking about elections other than me. Thank God. Thank you, you guys, for doing that. I wanted to report TTP. We had our forum February 10th. It was a great turnout. We had at least 95 people show up. It was very robust conversations. We got very positive feedback. And we want to thank Peter Michelina for providing the VFW as our host location. He did that, and that was great. We're also talking about hosting a midterm forum before we vote in November, and that will be a nonpartisan with invites to both parties. Also, we want to thank Joe, who did a very fair-minded article on Kathy and I regarding TTP. Thank you, Joe. So we have done quite a bit of block walking. You know, you never know who's going to open up the door when you knock. And it's been an amazing opportunity to talk to the people. Many are so undecided. It's frightening. There are so many people that are disgusted. They are angry. They are apathetic. Some are curious. Not everybody's receptive. Clearly, most are so disappointed in our representatives who claim to represent us. The people are grumbling, which candidate is the lesser of two evils? We heard way too many times. I didn't talk about the electronic voting systems. Please note that we are forced to use. I didn't talk about our voter rolls that have deceased persons, ineligible persons, duplicate named persons, and ghost voters. If you'd like the proof, ask, I'll show it. Their angst was about the people sitting in those chairs. And in higher offices, the city officials are not excluded. I'm hopeful that we did encourage many to go vote because it matters. A few were planning to go vote on that day. One thing that was consistent that we spoke were the people were extremely thankful that we took time to talk to them and share what we knew about the candidates. It's good when you end a conversation on a positive note. But boy, is there mudslinging going on. Not by all candidates. Would God be approving of what you're doing, or your campaign manager is doing, or an elected representative is doing on your behalf? I don't think so. I like the candidate that says, choose me because I will defend your civil liberties, and call me. I need to know from you what you are concerned about. I need to hear from you. How can I represent you better? God help us should we hear those words from any of you. Very few candidates own that attitude, but we the people know who you are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's the last public speaker for that. We'll move on to number 3 is presentation and discussions. Presentation of certificate of appreciation to the Order of Eastern Star Battle Chapter 9 in recognition of their generous donation of stuffed Christmas stockings to all juvenile housed in the county detention center. And Linda.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you allowing me the time to come in and read this certificate of appreciation. I think it's very important. And so Brazos County Juvenile Services presents the Order of the Eastern Star, Bedell Chapter number 9, in sincere appreciation for their generous donation This organization has consistently gone above and beyond for our community, providing Christmas stockings for the youth in detention, as well as providing Christmas gifts to CPS children and local schools across the Brazos Valley for several years. Their continued commitment for serving children in need has made a meaningful and lasting impact. This recognition is to honor their generosity and highlight the positive partnerships that make such efforts possible. We would like to thank them for always supporting initiatives that uplift our kids and community. And we really do appreciate it. I have some of the ladies here, and I wondered if you'd give us time to take a picture with y'all.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. See you, sweetheart. How is everything going? Thank you. No, I'm gone.
Oh, this is my niece.
Hey, Chuck, how you doing? Good to see you.
She works in our department.
You been doing okay?
That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much for doing that for our juvenile offenders. We sometimes forget about them at Christmas, and we shouldn't. Thank you.
Amen.
Okay, we'll move on to presentation and discussion by Trevor Lansdowne, Director of Project Management, on the following progress of issues related to Brazos County Administration Building Renovation Project, and B is review of draft report financials from deferred maintenance Phase 2 building evaluations.
Morning, Judge and Commissioners. Trevor Lansdowne, Director of Project Management. Wanted to take the time to provide an update on the renovations happening in the building here. It's topical because we got a change order on the agenda later on. And so kind of wanted to go through the good, the bad, and the ugly that we've uncovered through the process that kind of drove the need. So we've been working through, well, oh, there we go, sorry. Demolition began in the sanctuary and in the north wing in December. The demo crew got in there and did a bang-up job and got the place cleared out. We are looking at starting earthwork, bringing in new select fill into the sanctuary space, and getting concrete poured in that space once we can work through some of the issues that we're going to look at. So just again, the pictures will kind of tell the story, but this is the cleared out sanctuary space from what will end up being the finished floor on the second level in there. And so the following are just some images from that space. You know, once we pulled the walls back and got everything pulled off, you could see the old building kind of exposed on the side back right there. And that backs up right to Constable Lampo's office and Judge Nunn's office on the first floor. I know they've been dealing with a lot of noise and vibrations. Everybody has, but they've been getting the brunt of it. And then the treasurer's office on the second floor, risk management on the second floor, all exposed right there. So again, I appreciate everybody working with us through this.
But that keeps Lampo awake, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Good. Okay, good.
Again, just some more photos of what we're looking at. And again, in this project, that whole second floor gets built out. We're going to add structure in there, build that out, and that's the future offices for the budget office, the auditor's office, and project management. This image here is kind of on topic for some of the issues that we're going to kind of talk about in a little bit, but this is the it was the old restrooms that everybody realizes now that we don't have down at the end of the hall, and so everybody's squeezing into the two-staller down here. But this will all be all new, fully built-out restrooms for the public. And again, the new commissioner's courtroom is going to be down there on the first floor too.
So is this the one that on your documents say we're going to be enlarged?
Yes, so they'll have more stalls. I think an additional ADA stall in both restrooms as well. This is the north wing for those who are familiar with that space. Again, they got in there and cleaned it out. It's a pretty much a full shell at this point. And then once we can get the finish out crews in there, we're going to get that one worked out. So this is going to be the future home for the Human Resources Department. And so kind of shifting gears to some of the issues that we found, so some of the not so fun that we've uncovered. So the roof decking for the metal mansard roof that's over the sanctuary, once we opened everything up, we got a bunch of the old catwalk down and exposed. A lot of that plywood and everything is rotted around that from water exposure over the years. And so part of the upcoming change order is going to be to go in and replace all of that so that the new metal that we put on is adhered to new decking. And just so you can kind of see this photo for reference, it's all of the kind of rusted metal that we've got around that space there. That's one of the larger chunks of what's in the change order. The other large chunk is so when we pulled everything off, took the drywall down, one of the things that we exposed was all of the exterior sheathing. And so part of, if you'll remember way back, part of what drove the scope for the envelope was that we knew that we had water intrusion happening, migrating from the outside of the building to the inside. We did not know the scale of the damage to the exterior sheathing. We carried an allowance in the project and in the contract to handle spot fixes where it might have been damaged, but once we got everything exposed, we realized that it all needs to be replaced. The joints in that sheathing weren't taped or sealed, and so there was really nothing keeping any moisture from coming through there. I mean, so you can see there's lots of mold on the walls and organic growth happening throughout. The other thing that we kind of got into, and this has been, we were kind of chasing this one, the storm drain piping that carries the roof drains from part of the roof around the sanctuary all comes down and then out through the sanctuary. So underground and then out both on the 28th Street side and then out towards the kind of towards the IT building. And so when we got into there, we found several cracked and damaged pipes. So obviously, we were getting water back towards into the building and underneath the slab that was in the sanctuary. We also, once we exposed it, we also realized that we actually had negative slope on that piping back towards the building. So it was taking extreme pressure to get the water out and to combat that slope. And so again, it kind of goes to a lot of the water issues that you're going to see some more pictures of. We are, if you remember, also in the scope, we're adding an elevator to the front of the building. That kind of the elevator pit for it is going to be right about there. Well, again, we didn't know all these things when we started, but that storm pipe ran right through where our elevator pit was going to be. So one of the things that we had to do, and again, some of these things are happening in real time, and so it doesn't really allow for our schedules to change, and I appreciate the contractor's flexibility, and they got creative with it. We essentially had to saw cut part of the what used to be the entry door, kind of the foyer of the building, to allow for the rerouting of the storm pipe. And so this was the old line here, and again, a lot of it was cracked and damaged, and so that's all been replaced and backfilled. But essentially what they did was we had to saw cut kind of through the old entrance and then bring that storm pipe now through a new route down and out and around what's going to be the elevator pit. We also exposed kind of a weird condition with the storm pipe. So it was a 6-inch line that for some reason turned into 2 4-inch lines and then turned back into another 6-inch line. And I don't know that anybody can really understand why they did what they did, but that's renovations. And you get to find these kinds of things from 40, 50 years ago. So So again, all this kind of factors into the pricing and everything that you're seeing. As we had to reroute this, so this was all concrete that was not slated to get torn out in the original scope. So coming back to that, we've added scope that's in part of the change order to fix the concrete that's out there as well as what is running along this plane of the sanctuary here too. The idea was to not have it all look like a patchwork quilt when we got done, to have new concrete poured against 40-year-old concrete. And so part of what's in the change order is to go in and to fix all of the civil work that's out here in the front. We did not have a civil engineer on the project or a landscape architect. We had an allowance for some landscaping to be redone and put back for what we ripped out. That is not in the change order, but I'll talk about that coming up.
I have a question. How old
Yes,
is-
ma'am.
How old is this building?
I believe the sanctuary was 80. It started, I think, 79 and opened in 81. I think was the timeline on it. So we're 44 years.
That's great.
So these are the areas for new concrete out in front of the building, sidewalks, ramps, and again, just repairs to make it all uniform. So one of the other things, and again, I mentioned all of the additional saw cutting and excavation that had to happen in the entryway. So we took the opportunity to transition what was going to be all carpet here and switch to a more resilient flooring material for terrazzo. So we've actually developed design standards now that weren't developed when this design was in place. And so for all of our public areas and concourses, terrazzo is our standard moving forward. Like what you'd see like in the courthouse, it'll be in the annex building. We've got it at the MEO. We're building that into all of our projects now. And so part of the pricing in the change order is to shift to that for the scope of work that's tied to the sanctuary. So the lobby down to what used to be kind of the fire doors down outside, closer to Lampo's offices. And then in addition to the restrooms and all the wet areas, it does have a higher upfront cost, but it's much lower maintenance over time and it lasts forever. So here's kind of just a rendition of the ASI that the architects produced for the flooring. There's a few other ancillary items, not that they don't matter, but they don't carry as high of a cost. The HVAC test and balance for both the new and current systems was originally carried as an owner item, and we're transitioning that to be under the scope of the contractor. So they're going to carry it. There is a time extension to the change order as well. So there's 60 days added to the schedule, and the bulk of that time is for. Now that we're having to replace all the exterior sheathing, it sort of changes how they're going to have to work on the envelope of the building. So they're going to have to, and again, we've talked through it with them. They're going to put back everything that they take off. That's going to be the idea, so that we're not leaving the building overexposed to bad weather or what have you. And so it's going to slow down their ability to work through the envelope work. And so that's the 60-day time extension, which again carries a cost in their general requirements for the project as well. So, and then the new concrete that I explained earlier too. The change order is right at $975,000 and is and again creates a 60-day extension of the project schedule. Kind of looking back at our budget, so we had budgeted $18,500,000 for this project. So their bid on the project and their contract was a little over $14,500, and so we do have funding as a project reserve, and we're not going to have to dip into contingency to fund this change order. So again, $14,865 was the original contract, and the new is going to be the $15,839, assuming that the court approves the change order. It represents about a 6.5% increase to their contract. And again, the new substantial completion date would be next May, so May 17th of 2027. So this is all happening in real time, and so the slides that I was able to produce for you guys, we actually found more things between the time that we have to post the agenda and then the time that I was going to be presenting. And so I've added in some additional slides that weren't in the original ones that y'all received because on February the 13th we had a pretty big storm and we got a whole bunch of rain all at one time. And as you'll see in the following photos, we took a bunch of water into the sanctuary. Not necessarily from the big hole that you see in the building that they're using as a construction entrance, but after investigation, we found out that we had multiple failures of some of our storm piping. We found a really old area drain that was buried out in the middle of the sanctuary that water was coming into from the 28th Street side. And then we found, and here's some of the water that this was all dry before the 13th, and so all of this was water that migrated into that sanctuary from outside the building. And so the contractor we found a couple of these places where we had old piping and they've capped off so that we won't get water in from those areas anymore. This one was tied to that old area drain that was that was buried. And again, there was additional excavation on there as well, and some of that is because of having to dig out a lot of this old infrastructure that was never abandoned. We're getting it out of there now, so. This was after the rain and after they tried to get the place as dry as we could. It's still not dry completely in there, and it is holding us up. And so we're kind of in a weird spot where they need to put new select fill, good material in, but we don't want to put good material in until we figure out how we stop the water. And so we're working through it currently. So this was another spot that we uncovered. So this was a storm pipe that was running along the north side of the building, and I'll kind of show another picture. But again, this is the kind of stuff that we find. This was a field fabricated a Y adapter that they basically just cut a hole in a I think that's a 6 or 8 inch line, and they stuck a 3 or 4 inch pipe just into it, and then just wrapped it with some material. So it wasn't actually sealed. And then when we got a little deeper and we found out this storm pipe was actually clogged a little bit upstream from this Y that they had created. And so we think that that's where a lot of this water that was coming from the north side of the building was coming from. And so when you look at the civil grade out here, so we're really high out here by the parking lot and the new temporary sidewalk. And right now all the water just flows back towards the building. Well, all the water was going into an area drain that's right about here, and that was branched off of that pipe that was clogged up. And so all of that water was sort of just finding its way underneath our slab and migrating over to the sanctuary space. And so it's not on today, but it's going to be a future ask. Just the way that the timing worked out is we really need the design team to bring on a civil engineer to go in and look at some of this. I'd like to move this area drain out here away from the building and then regrade all of this so that we can catch all the storm water outside of the building and work it back. This is where we found the field fabricated Y. So that storm pipe was running all the way down this building, and again, it was catching the area drain, but it was also catching a couple of the downspouts that you'll see over here. So it was catching all this water that was all off of this roof, plus anything that was just sheet flowed over there. And again, we're finding it all inside the building. So this is something we would have never seen, in the sanctuary as it was with the slab there. It never, we would just never have known until we went and ripped it all up. So, again, this is just kind of an overhead. We've already greenlit our contracted surveying firm to go ahead and start surveying and grabbing points on the area so that when we do bring the civil engineer on, they can move quickly with their redesign. Are there any questions about this before I move over to the deferred maintenance work?
Trevor,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let me ask you something. On a big project like this, and let's say this and the medical examiner's building and the future 101 building across the street, isn't it typical for the contractors to include reserves when they give that bid?
So we require a contingency to the project. We carried $1 million on this one, and I'll take the blame for it. I did not want to eat up my entire contingency on this project in the first 6 weeks, because I would have been coming back to you guys for additional funding and just to fund the contingency once it ran out. And so, if this were $25,000 or $50 or even $100,000, we would have just handled it through a use of contingency. Because the scale was so large, that's why I'm coming to you guys with the change order.
But right now, we're not using any of the contingency on it?
No, no,
Okay.
it'll be whole still.
Well, and then let me ask you something else, because this came up back in September 23rd, when we talked about an amendment to the medical examiner's building, and it was for $156,730, and I would guess that we had a contingency on that project also.
So, excuse me.
And I think my question is, on any of these projects, do we ever get the contingency back?
We do.
Because so far, I've never seen anything come back, except on road projects. I've seen contingencies coming back, but.
Yeah, so the added funding on the medical examiner's office was for the third-party project management firm that we hired. So that wasn't part of construction. That was a separate contract that we don't carry contingency on those professional services ones.
Yeah, but the problem was because of the contractor. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because of the contractor, and they had to delay the project by X number of days. So we had to hire these people to come in and, what'd you call it? You called it something.
Sorry, that was Brazos and Associates on the ME's office. And that,
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and watch it again, but that delay that we gave Vaughn, there was no additional funding added to their contract. It was time, but that came because we directed a pause and a reevaluation of the design, and we had used our commissioning firm at the time to do a peer review of the design before we got too deep into construction and had to do a bunch of rework. And so.
Okay, so do you anticipate on that project that we will be refunded some of the reserves that were put in place when the contract was signed?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have not come back for additional funding on that project to date. And we're still on slate for substantial completion in June. And we're still carrying an active contingency on the project.
Great.
And the further we go along, the less risk there is for need to access those funds too. So I feel pretty good about where we're at on the ME.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Transition. I know you're talking about stormwater, but my concern is recently when we were below freezing for 64 hours, the new plumbing, we're going to be using the new PEX type material that won't freeze, and we won't have leakage and damage and.
So we have not transitioned to PEX commercially for commercial construction, and most places haven't. I always ask every time we get into kind of a design and see, like, at what point does that become kind of the new norm? All of the domestic water will be copper. Everything that's in the building, I mean, even outside the building, it's all insulated. We don't have much that's exposed. There's a couple, and we're actually gonna have to move a couple water lines that we found through the process also, which we'll handle through contingency because that's a much smaller cost. But
So there's some older technology also where you can bring in the different water lines to a central location where if you have a leak, you can simply turn that off and continue to use the rest of the building. Have we
Yes.
considered that?
that is the plan. So
Okay.
one of the other things that we found, let me kind of go back through because there might be a photo that shows it. Sorry. So if you kind of see that black line against the wall, so that's actually a temporary water line that the contractor put in because when we got into the building, we actually found out that we call it Area B on the project, but it's essentially this part of the building, is actually fed from a water line that runs into the old sanctuary. And so that was another kind of aha moment that we found when we opened everything up. We didn't really assume that the old building was fed from the new one. But we're looking into how we're going to reroute that And we will absolutely be putting in as many isolation valves as we can to sort of section off the building, both from domestic water and for fire pipe as well, because we have the same issue with the fire suppression too, so.
Okay. And then the third thing was there was an allocation for signage. Assume we're looking at making sure those are ADA compliant signage.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have.
And I just want to say, looking at the numbers, because I know when people see $15 million, it's they sort of get at that moment. But as we talk about, this building is already over 40 years old, so the hope is that $15 million, if you amortize it over, say, a 50-year building or a 75-year building with all of these new constructions, be it the medical examiner's office, be it the 101, and then the renovation of this, it sounds like a lot of money, but if you, like I said, if you spread it out over the life of the building, the hope is we're not just building temporary housing. These buildings will endure such that we won't have to do this again in the next 50 to 75 years, 60 years. I don't know if it'll go 75.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's the whole point. We're doing everything we can to protect the county and the taxpayers' investment into these buildings. And that's sort of why we developed our design standards too. We want to build resilient, as low maintenance as we can, buildings that we don't have to go back into in 5-10 years and to reinvest a whole lot of money. We'd rather, a dollar goes a lot further today than it will in 5, 10, 20 years. And so we're trying to stretch it as far as we can on these projects on the upfront side.
Well, as one that knows how to build stuff from HGTV, I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you. Any more questions on the admin building? If not, I'll move on. So one of the other projects that we have going is our deferred maintenance. And if you'll recall, 2 years ago, we hired a firm to help us evaluate any building issues at the Brazos County Expo Complex. We turned that into an actual project that's ongoing now. And phase 2 of that was an evaluation of the courthouse, the detention center, the jail, the Brazos Center, and the sheriff's office. And so we're trying to take these in chunks so that we don't grab it all at once, so that we can work through our issues over time as we try to true up everything that we've got. And so, and I think y'all have the paper in front of you, but we did get the draft reports back, and I know that the text is really small and kind of hard to see. But it's topical to Marcy's agenda item as well. And so we wanted to kind of get the numbers, at least the draft numbers out there from what we've got. And so just on those 4 buildings alone, and some of the envelope work on some of the other facilities that we've got, we're looking at about $34 million in deferred maintenance. We kind of came into this with a plan of budgeting and spending about $10 million a year in deferred maintenance to get us trued up and get us back where we needed to be facility-wise. That's a bigger number than I was expecting. It is broken down by kind of business critical, life safety type items, which is the almost 19 million, and then you're going to need to do this in the next 1 to 5 years, which is pretty much the remainder of that at the 13 million. And so I wanted to just get this number in front of y'all while we're kind of talking budget, debt, and those items. So,
What do you mean by system replacement? Approaching this it's a priority description, P2.
Sure. So those are just major building systems. So whether it be HVAC, cooling, heating, chillers, electrical systems, whether that's generators, panels that may be not code compliant anymore or anything like that. And then also there's some fire suppression items that are high dollar ones in some of the buildings too that were built prior to a lot of the existing and current code. And so any work that we do, any major work that we do in some of these facilities, those are going to be automatic triggers we're going to be required to upgrade. So.
Trevor, I'm really big on deferred maintenance. I was chairman of our finance committee at First Baptist Bryan.
Yes,
right
sir.
there on the bypass. That building's 20 years old. They did not have a deferred maintenance account, and they have one now. But what made them finally realize how important it was, we had 3 air conditioners on the roof go out at $160,000 a piece.
Oh,
Yep.
boy.
And, when I served on appropriations for Texas, universities would come to us all the time, and they would have nothing set up for deferred maintenance. And it was an issue every legislative session. Why aren't you setting up? And then they end up coming to us, and, you know, they put off deferred maintenance for so long that now the cost of doing what needs to be done has doubled or tripled.
Absolutely.
So it's good to see that we're not, that we're at least looking forward to what can be done to mitigate some of that damage.
Yes, sir.
Now, the only other question I have is, you know, we have, I've got a list here. We have 39 properties, the county does. And my question is, are there properties on this list that we don't need anymore? And if we don't need them anymore, why aren't we putting them on the market to sell them and recoup that money? And when we sell them, we get them back on our tax rolls too.
Sure.
So.
We do have in the upcoming, it'll be in the next month or so, maybe 6 weeks, the advertisement for the scope of work for our master plan. Once it hits court, I've actually sent you guys all that scope of work for a final review. We do have an item in there for the evaluation of all of our existing real estate, as well as any other potential real estate for some future county operation that we should be interested in, but also to evaluate all of these properties that you've got on your list to say, do we need it, do we not need it, and where do we go?
Well, this could help offset some of that deferred maintenance that we're talking about over the next 5 years. So
Sure.
I'm glad to hear that we're in the process of getting that done because it needs to be. We need to cash that in.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Okay,
All right. It's Jason's turn.
thank you, Trevor.
Thank you, Trevor.
Okay, next we have a presentation by Jason Ware, Emergency Management Coordinator of the Brazos County Hazard Mitigation Action Plan.
Good morning again, Judge, Commissioners. When I began.
What's your name?
Jason Ware. Do I keep forgetting, or are you just messing with me? I think you're messing with me, Commissioner. Well, I appreciate everybody coming out for my presentation this morning. It's always a wonderful thing to see. This plan is a collaborative plan between all 4 cities to include Wixom Valley, Curtin, Bryan, College Station, Texas A&M University. We all worked on this, but one of the other cool things about this plan is it worked with the general public as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we engage the public during this presentation. And we've got a resolution on the agenda for a little bit later on, probably this afternoon since we're a little late already. But the resolution is basically where Brazos County is adopting this plan. It's updated every 4 years, 5 years, sorry. But it's something that allows the county to go after mitigation grant funding. So when we talk about mitigation for Brazos County, we're building a resilient community. And that starts not only at the government level, but at the taxpayer level, at the residential housing and the commercial structures that we have. What you do to your property and what we do with road projects or with things going forward helps mitigate and make things better when it comes time to deal with disasters. Talking about flooding or tornadoes or just storm damage in general. So this plan took a long time. You know, when we started updating this plan back in 2020, 2021, COVID happened. And then, you know, it takes a lot to get the general public and all the partners together to work on this plan effectively. So it takes, you know, several years to produce a plan such as this. A couple weeks ago, not sure when it was exactly, but I sent each of you the 283-page document to review. There will be a test at the end of the presentation to make sure that everybody read it. And but I wanted to make sure y'all understood what the Hazard Mitigation Action Plan was prior to adopting the plan, instead of just putting something out there and saying, here, can y'all vote on this? So let's go ahead and go through it. I know the font is a little small up there. But basically, hazard mitigation is to reduce the loss of life and to lessen the impact on properties as we go through different, everything from natural disasters to infectious disease, that type of stuff. So we take into account all of that stuff. But the only way hazard mitigation can be accomplished is to make sure we're including all of the public, all of the governmental officials, the different departments in each of the cities and the county, to get different opinions, different ways that people have been affected by natural disasters. This document, when we talk about mitigation and stuff, we focus on the natural disasters, if you will, except, and we were one of just a handful of plans across the state that actually, and the nation, that included infectious disease into our plan. To the point where when FEMA reviewed our plan back in April and preliminarily approved it until all the resolutions are passed, they actually didn't even look at that hazard. They don't grade that hazard, but it's in there because we know that COVID was something that shut down the economy, that affected people, personal lives and stuff, and we know that it's going to happen again. Not sure when and whatnot, but it's going to happen again. When the health district came to us and said, "Can we put this in that plan?" we agreed to it, and we put the work on them, of course, because they're the experts when it comes to infectious disease. But they did a very, very good job of preparing that hazard profile, which we included in the plan. So we look at, when we start doing this plan, putting this plan together, we look at the hazard profile for the county itself. We come up with ideas of what all hazards could be affected, that could affect Brazos County as a whole. One thing that you will notice is that in that plan is that there is no hazard profile for hurricanes. Could we get a hurricane? Absolutely. We could absolutely see a hurricane come through Brazos County. However, what we want to mitigate against are the elements of the hurricane that we could see, and stuff that we see all the time: the flooding, the high winds, the wind damage, that type of stuff. So that's how we broke down the hazard profile for hurricanes, is to split it up into multiple factors that we see all the time that we can mitigate against. When we talk about that vulnerable assessment or the vulnerability analysis, we look at for those low frequency, high consequence hazards that could affect Brazos County. Do we see tornadoes all the time? Absolutely not. But when we see them, are there financial impacts to the general public? Absolutely. And so the consequence is high. So when we looked at our hazard profile for all the natural disasters that we could see in Brazos County, we did that vulnerability analysis. And a lot of that data was brought in by historical knowledge of folks that have lived here all their life. We looked at the National Weather Service and brought in those different hazards that we've seen in the past. And some of that data goes back to the 60s and 70s, which gives us a pretty good idea of what Brazos County could see. However, as we've been noticing, as we've updated these plans through the years, we noticed that we're getting more frequent certain things that we haven't seen. Tornadoes seem to be more, we've had more tornadoes in the last 10 years than we did the prior 10. So we look at the history and talk to meteorologists. We talk to folks at Texas A&M University that have been there forever and have that historical knowledge to bring that information in. And then I can't talk statistics because that wasn't my area of expertise. There were some folks way smarter than I was that were doing the statistics for this. But at the end of the day, when we implement, if y'all choose to do the adoption of the resolution a little bit later on, Not only with this plan do we have something that we can go for mitigation grant funding, but it also helps us and helps the public build that stronger, more resilient community as a whole. And that's our main goal. You know, grant funding is great. There's a lot of grant funds out there. If you don't have a plan in place and adopted by the county or the partners that are involved in the plan, then you can absolutely get that grant funding if if the application and all that stuff is good. But at the end of the day, we want to build that resilient community. Let people moving into Brazos County know what they see. You know, if you're from Washington State and moved to Texas, you probably didn't deal with too many tornadoes up there in Washington State. This plan identifies what we could see here in Brazos County. I'm not going to go into all this. It has a mission statement, it has the vision of the plan. Again, maintain that secure and a sustainable future through mitigation. And then our goals are listed there. At the end of the day, it's to increase the awareness for the public, for the government to understand that we need to build a resilient community as a whole. This is a list of the hazards that we could see in Brazos County, and they are based on historical data and the public perception. So we included a survey that is still active. We are still getting information. You can find that survey online on our website and input information into there. And it's not asking for any identifying information, but basically we want to know, what have you experienced since living in Brazos County, or what have you have you been through a tornado? Do you have flooding in your neighborhood? That type of stuff. And so this is a list of how that data panned out, and you will notice that most of the worries, most of the higher things are things that we deal with all the time. You know, flooding, thunderstorms and wind, straight line winds, drought for sure. Then wildland fires. These are things that worry people and worry our governmental entities, emergency management, what we plan for. You will also see that dam failure is right there in the middle. We have a lot of high hazard dams across Brazos County. A lot of people don't realize that we have a lot of high hazard dams, and most of them are privately owned. Lake Bryan is a high hazard dam. It's got 3 of them on the property. That's not if you don't hear about it in the news, then people think, well, nothing's going on with it. If we have a dam failure anywhere, if it's a high hazard dam, that's considerable loss of life. That's considerable property damage, stuff that we have to look at and people have to pay attention to. And then, of course, extreme heat, severe winter weather, that type of stuff is on down the list. With infectious diseases, COVID was the one thing that stuck out in everybody's mind. We know that eventually we're going to have another one of these days.
Jason, did your plan look at flooding notification, since that's one of the priority risks?
So you will notice that here in a couple of slides, there's a project list, an example of projects that each entity would like to see. Part of the flooding projects wasn't necessarily the warning system, because we do have Code Red or Crisis by 24 right now, IPOS capability, but it's hydrology studies. Some of our FEMA maps in some of our neighborhoods haven't been updated in years. And so in order to understand flooding, we have to do a hydrology study. And so that is one of the projects that was put forth. Let me preference by saying this plan has no budgetary impacts right now, okay? If we identify something that needs like a hydrology study on Wixon Creek, for instance, then that could be a capital project that we may put in for later on. But currently, no budgetary impacts from this plan being adopted. Yes, that's where we solicit input for different projects that go into the plan. At the time when we were, the plan was for the last 5 years, And so the next 5 years, we'll look at other projects that we need to put forth. And when you go after that mitigation grant funds, if the project's not listed in your plan, then you can't get mitigation funding for that. So we will definitely, a living document, like I said, the survey's still out there and we're still gathering input and stuff. If there are, I would suspect we would probably go ahead and start updating this plan at the beginning of next year, so that way we have a couple of years to go through this whole process again. And I would be very much open to talking about future projects going forward to include in this plan. So that way, again, we can build that resilient community together. This isn't my document. This isn't emergency management's document. This is all of our document. We need to produce a plan that is good. So,
Thank you.
again, we talked about the purpose, the sections of the plan, obviously the county profile, so what the county looks like. You got the planning process and everything that we go through during this process. Talks about all the hazard profiles, and then those mitigation actions, those projects I was just talking about, what we want to see going forward. And then again, how we're going to do this plan management going forward as well. What's the timeline look like? This is an example of some of the projects that were submitted and how it's submitted. Even though it may say general funds, we would obviously go after grant funds before. But these are some of the projects, and again, we've got several hazard profiles that are out there. But we had to break it down by the actual project, who's going to do it, the estimated cost for that, and then the funding source, if there is a project that we go after as a county or a city or whatever. Where's that funding going to come from? We try to identify that up front. So that way, if we do come for funding later for these projects, then it's already out there that, we're looking at these different projects. Then we put a priority, high, medium, low priority, and then the project length. At the end of the day, if we don't complete these projects, there's no ramifications from that. We're not going to get in trouble. These are just ideas, projects that we think we probably need to make things stronger. And then going forward, if we choose to do it, great. If not, then we just move on with the plan. And then, of course, it identifies the different departments that could be responsible for those different projects. There's some more. Each entity had to provide at least 2 projects per hazard. So this section of the plan is quite extensive. It takes a lot of gathering information to make that happen. So when we talk about the stakeholders, everybody, this is a whole community approach. Departments, agencies within Brazos County, within the cities, all contributed to this. Different entities, Blaine College, Texas A&M University, all had feedback for this plan as well. The NPOs, the nonprofit organizations that work with vulnerable populations, we try to meet with them so we can address some of the vulnerable populations that we have. But the biggest thing is, what do our community partners see this plan being? What effects have they had because of natural disasters? That is a big thing. And like I said, when this goes out again for open opinion, the website is out there. We really highly encourage our community members to do this survey because we really look at the what our community has faced. Not only us, but everybody that works in the community, that's a taxpayer in the community. We want to know what they're experiencing. So this was the timeline. So this project or this plan was last approved 2019 to 2023. Because of COVID, it slowed everything down. We got an extension, and then we began planning again in 2024 because of different turnovers and several meetings. All the partners came together, and we punched this out. In April of 2025, FEMA approved the plan at their level. That meant we had to send it up there. We sent it to Texas Division of Emergency Management first, then they sent it to FEMA. FEMA red marked everything, sent it back to us. We had to make some more corrections, and then we submitted it again. And then in April of 2025, they approved it, preliminary approval until the resolutions are passed. And then, so we actually do have an approved plan. It's just hasn't been adopted by the entities. And we have until April of 2026, which is just a couple of months from now, to pass resolutions for all 4 cities and the county as well. And so a lot of time spent on this plan, a lot of man hours, and so we're here seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It's probably a train coming because we're fixing to have to start over again, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel. Again, the feedback survey responses is ongoing. We had public meetings. We were required to have 3 public meetings where we host the public at our office. We had one at the Brazos Center as well. And these are done in the evening hours after the working class or outside of their work hours so that they can attend these meetings. But it allowed the public to come review the draft form of the plan, to talk to us about different questions that they may have. And we've actually had 3 of those public meetings since the middle of or the end of 2023, a meeting in 2024, and then 2025 we had our 3rd meeting. And now we're at the end where we're trying to get the resolutions passed. Again, public input is a big thing. I can't preach that enough. We need public input to make this plan, good. Shout out to some of our county departments that we utilize for our portion of the plan. Obviously, administration, you guys, even though y'all weren't necessarily contributing to things, but at the end of the day, you allow us to do this plan and work through it. So thank you very much. Of course, Brazos County Emergency Management, the Health District was a big thing, and then Road and Bridge because of the mitigation side of things when it comes to roads and culverts and stuff like that. They were a big, had a lot of input into this plan as well. Our plan is located on our website. There's a link right there if you want to view all 283 pages, such as the same ones that the commissioners reviewed. It's there for your viewing pleasure. Once everybody gets their resolutions passed and everything, then we will upload the final plan. Right now it's in draft form. These are all the entities that participated from the government level. So, like I said, Brazos County, City of Bryan, College Station, A&M, Wixom Valley, and Curtin all produced information, helped us with this plan. And then, of course, it's our Community Emergency Operations Center as a whole, of all of our emergency management partners that built the plan, that actually wrote it. So, and those are all their contacts. If you need to reach out to any of the emergency management coordinators, they're all listed right there. That is the last slide. I was threatened with bodily injury if I went the hour that I was dedicated to this, so I'm not going to go any longer, but I will take some questions for y'all. Yeah. I told Marcy and Nina a while ago I was going to have to cover every page in depth, and it wasn't a good response. So I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
All right, thank you.
So we will move on to number 4, proclamation 26-002 through 26-0011, recognizing the following outstanding citizens with significant contributions to the African American National Heritage Society, DBA, the Brazos Valley African American Museum in this community.
Move for approval A through J.
Second?
Motion made, seconded to approve A through J. Discussion. I don't know whether there was anybody here. I don't think usually this is given somewhere, maybe a meeting later on, but
I don't see anyone from the
yeah,
city.
I didn't see anybody either.
Helen is here. She's
Helen
on the
is?
board. Helen Washington right here.
Helen,
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So does she need to do anything? No? Okay.
you were
No. What were you asking for?
I just I guess we'll go ahead and vote on it.
Okay. Okay.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None motion carries. And thank all of those who helped out with the Brazos Valley African American Museum. Number 5 is approval of resolution 26-003, adoption of the Brazos County Hazard Mitigation Action Plan mitigating risk, protecting Brazos County from all hazards, 2024 to 2029.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. And I think, Marcy, you didn't need to speak. Okay. I think that was number 5. Then, did Cindy, did you want to speak on that?
Cindy Wiley, Precinct 1. Is Jason still here? If he is, I did not get the survey. I don't know how it was sent out, but I guess I'll do my online survey here. I just had a couple of thoughts about some of the hazards that weren't addressed, and I don't know if these will be applicable or not, but a cell phone outage where the county residents cannot reach any emergency services or law enforcement. What about an EMP attack? What about a grid failure where the whole county is plunged into darkness? We have a train derailment, or a train derailment wasn't addressed. I live very close to railroad track, i.e. a chemical spill, and nuclear, since we have RELIS that either has or will have reactors on site. Those are my additions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Why didn't they grab him? We'll bring him back in.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None motion carries. Number 6 is resolution authorizing publication notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation. And we've got Marcy. There you are.
I
Okay.
wrote the wrong numbers, Judge. It's to be
Okay,
6 and
that's
7.
all
I'm
right,
so
yeah.
sorry. Hi, Marcy Turner, County Auditor. I just wanted to go through some of the attachments that you have on your agenda item for this authorization of publication of notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation. The first in the notes on your cover sheet, I want to just highlight one thing. I'll read the whole thing and correct one mistake I made. As discussed in a workshop dated November 12th, 2025, Brazos County has approximately $45 million in debt capacity available that would result in a projected FY27 debt tax rate. Sorry, I put 26. I'm working in 3 years right now. I'm closing 25, planning for 27. I'm in 26. So I ask for your apologies on that. A projected tax rate, debt tax rate in FY27 of 4 cents per $100 of valuation. This 4-cent debt tax rate mirrors the FY24 debt tax rate and will allow the county to use 20-year debt financing to pay for capital assets with a 40-year useful life. The strategy will preserve unreserved, uncommitted fund balance for future deferred maintenance projects and design and pre-construction services on any future capital plan projects that would be financed with future debt issuances. You have in this attachment the actual certificate for resolution, and if you'll turn to Exhibit A, I'll highlight on that resolution the wording that will be in the notice of intent to issue the certificates of obligation. This will go towards the county courthouse annex building, what we're calling 101 North. It would also go to this current building that we're doing the capital improvements on, in the amount not to exceed $38 million. Later on, the next resolution you'll pass on the next agenda item would allow us to reimburse ourselves from this date forward until we issue the debt for any expenses on those 2 projects. The next thing in your agenda item is you're going to see a projected use of unrestricted and uncommitted fund balance for FY26 through FY29. We closed out FY24
with a $132 million fund balance. I don't have finals yet on FY25. That'll happen in the next month. And from that budget, we transferred $3.9 million over to our committed emergency fund balance to follow our committed emergency fund balance policy. We used $14 million in the budget that Nina proposed to you and you all adopted in September towards this capital fund, towards this county administration building project we're doing right now in this building. And then $60 million was budgeted to transfer to be able to fund the the courthouse annex building across the street. This debt issuance would basically, instead of using $74 million of our fund balance, we would use $38 million in debt, and the remainder would be paid for with the fund balance. In addition to that, during the budget process last year, I showed you all we also had budgeted $8 million of general fund balance for 26 just to cover current operations on the general fund budget. And last year during the tax rate workshop, I walked you through how to get us to a situation where our M&O revenue would cover our ongoing M&O expenses. We would need $10 million in fund balance over the next 3 years to get us to a point where our M&O revenue is covering our M&O expenses. And then, of course, with the $33 million, that was just that we have no of at this point with deferred maintenance, that would drop our uncommitted, unrestricted fund balance, as I estimate it right now, of course it would change in years to come, to $1.1 million. So the purpose of this debt issuance is basically we can choose to either pay for this building in all cash and that building in all cash, or we can issue $38 million on our $74 million project and pay for some of it with debt and some of it with cash. The other piece I wanted to make sure and note to you all is, in addition to the $38 million of the certificates of obligation that you would be in this resolution authorizing the publication of the notice of intent, we would also issue at the same time $7 million in general obligation bonds. These were voted on by the voters in 2022 in what we call the TRIP bond election, and that $7 million is dedicated to going towards our commitment to TxDOT for the Bush-Wilburn exchange. We are committed for $15 million, and we would issue $7 million to cover a portion of that $15 million. You also have in your attachments the financing schedule of how this process works. We would look to come back to you on May 19th to approve the bond sale and the related documents. And then there's also a presentation that PFM, our bond financial advisors, have included. It's basically a summary of the debt workshop that you all sat through in November, but the debt capacity calculations that are in this presentation are germane to just this issuance of $45 million. Is there any questions you might have?
Marcy, I don't understand why we didn't have a bond election for all of this. You know, it was my understanding, you know, I'm new, but I thought we were paying cash for everything. And then you come back to us with issuing of bonds. And I don't have any problem with that. I'm just curious, why didn't we have a bond election?
Certificates of obligation, and I can have the debt counsel representative come up and speak, but certificates of obligations, if they follow certain guidelines by state statute, do not go to the voters for election.
No, I understand that, but I mean, all of a sudden we've switched gears from what we had originally decided on as a court to pay cash for across the street, pay cash for this, pay cash for the medical examiner's building, and now we want to go into debt. So I just have a problem with what precipitated this.
My thought would be, when we looked this morning, I'm sorry, this morning, I think there's $31 million in potential deferred maintenance that,
Yes, sir.
you know, that we're going to be looking at in the next year, 2, 3, whatever. So to me, that's the kind of thing you should probably use fund balance for, is deferred maintenance rather than, you know, the big projects.
I agree.
Like what we're talking about borrowing money for.
I do know when it comes to deferred maintenance, if we were to go out for debt for that, we would not be able to get 20-year debt on that. We would have to, it would have to be a shorter term debt, which would eat more of our debt capacity up.
Thank you.
Do y'all have any questions for the bond counsel or bond financial advisors? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
And let's see, I believe we've got 3, Mike Sutherland.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you, Judge. Been a long time.
Thank you, Mike.
Glad you're back. I have a couple questions. I don't know if I have any faults or not, but number one, the Navasota River needs to be on that disaster plan. And number two, we talk about the 4.25 interest rate causing a 4-cent increase in debt service property tax, but that's just an estimate. That's not. There's nothing in concrete. It says it in here that could change any time. So that doesn't make me feel good. Number two, you got a $45 million capacity left in debt, and it looks like you're going to use it all, because there won't be anything left when they issue this debt. There's nothing left for any kind of contingencies. Couple other things. It just seems like that this may be going down the same road that we went with when people got upset about that inner east loop, because it wasn't clearly defined in the beginning, and here is the same case. Why do you need $38 million? How'd you come up with that number? What projects do you have that add to $38 million? There's none listed in this plan. There's none identified. So I think before you do anything, you got to figure out what you need the money for and how much.
So I believe Marcy mentioned the projects that it would be used for.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Same thing with the inner east loop. You mentioned the projects, but there's no cost associated with it. That's the problem. You got to figure out how much these things are going to cost. It's not just a willy-nilly deal, and so you just need to know where you're going. And so you know, there's really, it's just like that other bond issue. There's no identification specifically. I mean, it's all general, but not identified. So we know as taxpayers what you're spending our money on. One of the, besides the interest rate not being stable and not being able to figure out, that's the function that drives the debt service rate. So there needs to be better planning on that. I don't know, this is a good time to issue debt anyway, the way the interest rates are. But the other thing is that the drafting errors, I don't know who proofed this document, but the certificate section mistakenly refers to officers and members of the city council. Is that correct?
No, that wouldn't be correct.
I'm sorry? I didn't think it was correct, even though this is a commissioner's court. And then there's several copy and paste errors that need to be looked at. I mean, needs to be looked at in detail. And I think one of the problems is you don't have anybody you can go to, because the auditor generally in an organization is somebody that's an unbiased position, somebody that you can call and say, hey, take a look at this for us and give us some kind of rationale like you're talking about. What are you doing this for? But you don't have that. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
I just wanted to note, the court approved a $60 million construction cost limitation on the courthouse annex building when we executed their contract, and then when we added funding for the 4th floor. That GMP will be on court March 24th, well above the $38 million. So just wanted to clear it up.
That's, Peter Michelina.
Good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. Peter Michelina, Precinct 4. So I did have some questions regarding this, and you know, I'm not as educated on this as Marcy is, so I was kind of hoping for some clarification on some items. So would any of this go ahead and increase our property tax rate by any sort of margin. I know that the estimate here on the .04 per $100 evaluation is really just an estimate. Is there a possibility of this increasing the property taxes for residents in Precinct 4 or the rest of the county? Some of the questions I had as well here is, what's going to be our future debt capacity if we max it out right now? If we use this $45 million, and I know that we set the debt capacity in a way that's not going to impact future courts or our future spending, it's a number, from my understanding, what we use ourselves to just set a limit. What is our debt capacity going to be in the future after this? And when it comes back to the deferred maintenance, I think Commissioner Brown had a great point earlier that this is only covering 4 buildings, and the estimate from a different slide, because it wasn't attached to this, was only $33 million for just those 4 buildings. Is there a road maintenance schedule that we are looking at? What sort of maintenance are we looking for other infrastructure needs across the county? How do we plan to pay for that? Is there an estimate that we have for anything else that is coming up in our future besides this? So overall, just more or less concerned on how we're going to be handling this going forward if we're maxing our debt right now with these bonds. I did also have another question regarding why this wasn't just put on the ballot for November. I feel like that would be, if we are in need of this, maybe it'd be a good thing for the voters to just take a look at, vote on, and have them decide, because otherwise we already have the cash allocated for this. And if we're incurring debt onto the taxpayers, then I think the taxpayers should have a voice in deciding that. One of the other questions too, maybe not a question, more just a request, if we could get a 30-day extension on this, because I know that we are allowed to get signatures and get public input in order to decide whether the county can go into this certificate of obligations. Maybe we could go ahead and get, have 30 days after these elections. I know we're in a busy time right now. Maybe get a time for citizens to get their input together, get more feedback from the community, see if this is something that they want to do as well with getting all of us, with putting us further into debt, because I think it's a community problem that's going to be affecting all of us, especially if our tax rates go up. One of the questions here on Exhibit A on page A1, there's a pledge of $1,000 to be certain of the revenues received by county from the operation of the Brazos Center. Is that $1,000, what is the rate that that's going to be coming out at? Is that going to be every time the Brazos Center is rented? It's a little unclear as to how much of the revenue is going to be coming out from this, from the Brazos Center. And then again, I'm going to reiterate one of the things that was said previously regarding the itemized budget on where these costs are coming from, who's making these evaluations. Also wanted to point out that seems like we're going towards a trend of using certificates of obligation. There are certificates of obligation taken out in 24, 22, I think 17. Some of these are coming up in the next 15 to 20 years. There's some that are expiring on 29, which will pull us out of debt. There also seems to be bonds that are going to be expiring between 37 and 49, 2037, 2049. So just wondering if we are just simply pushing off a problem to future courts and taxpayers the next 10, 15 years that we're going to have to deal with at that time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Marcy, you want?
I just wanted to clarify, we're not at debt capacity. From a perspective of, we had a 4-cent debt tax rate 2 years ago. It dropped below 4 cents for this current fiscal year because we retired debt. This debt capacity is just to get the debt tax rate back to 4 cents. It is not we could issue more debt than this if we chose to. This is just the debt capacity for a 4-cent debt tax rate.
Okay, thank you, Marcy. Cindy Wiley.
So I want to read something that the Texas Public Policy Foundation on February 19th posted. New data reveals a dramatic surge in local government debt across Texas, a trend that's pushing property taxes higher and intensifying the cost of living crisis for families and businesses. According to the latest estimates from the Texas Bond Review Board, the total debt owed by cities, counties, and school districts and special districts across Texas climbed to nearly $552 billion. fiscal year 2025, an increase of more than $52 billion in just 1 year. There's a video online, if anybody wants to watch it, that will explain how local government borrowing impacts taxpayers and what the solutions can be implemented by the legislature to defer that. I ask you, if these monies were in your own pocketbook, would you be making the same decision? It's easier to make a decision when it's somebody else's money. If a family pays off their debt, does it make sense for them to go right back into debt? It does not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe we've got a motion and no motion.
Can I make a statement?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Judge, I'll tell you what my real concern is, and, you know, we've all heard all the promises that our governor has been making, but he's been going around the state talking about how cities and counties are out of control tax-wise. And what he is advocating is that residents band together and talk about a rollback. And I think we need to be concerned about that, because if that is his message that he takes all over the state, then that's going to resonate in our own community. So for that reason, I'm going to vote against this.
Well,
Go ahead.
so I'm always concerned about debt. I normally pay cash for most of my stuff, so I can. I come from a German background, very tight physically. However, this is, we're moving back up to simply 4 cents. It's very conservative. I'd ask the auditor to look at some things like what other counties do. The two counties that came to mind were Hayes County and McLennan County. Both of those have universities. Hayes County is exploding in population, and their M&O tax rate bond is way higher than ours. McLennan County is about the same, and they're not growing, and they're not expanding like we are. So I think because this frees up capital for us to do other things, I'm in favor of that. And the reason I'm in favor of it, we really have to start looking at how do we manage and create a smaller, more effective government? How do we make it so that our constituents can reach out and deal with the county 365, 24/7 days a year? These facilities could literally take all our extra cash in order to fund those. And I don't think that's a good decision on behalf of our taxpayer dollar. Just like I have 2 kids getting ready to go to college. I'm not spending a lot of money. I'm holding on to money because I don't know how much they're going to cost me. This gives us additional funds to do those things that we probably need to do. We don't need to manage this county like we did in 2010, 2011. The technology has changed. We need to invest in the technology so that really should be one phone number you can call and you can find out which department of the 52 departments of the county can actually solve your problem, not having to put it on our constituents to call each one of those in order to figure it out. So I'm in favor of keeping the cash available to invest in things so we can provide better services to our county. And it makes sense to me that debt should be obligated toward these 70 and 80-year, 100-year assets, not short-term. So the longer term of an asset, the better interest rate you're going to get, although there's some unpredictability with that. I think they said 4.25, 4.29 interest rate, which is not bad. So anyway, I normally not in favor of debt, but I am in favor of this at this time.
Okay. So I'm gonna need, I don't think we have a motion in a second. So I'll need a motion in a second.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion made and seconded, to approve number 6. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, one opposal. Motion carries. Number 7 is Resolution 26-005, declaring intention to reimburse certain expenditures with borrowing proceeds.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
None motion, one opposal, motion carries. Number 8 is approval to amend September 16, 2025 proposed regular Commissioners Court meeting date, July 21st to 28th, to allow members of the court to attend North and East Texas County Judges and Commissioners Association on July 20 through 23, 2026.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None motion carries. Number 9 is approval of juvenile services to formally acknowledge and accept the donation of Christmas stockings filled with gifts for detained youth received during Christmas season.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None motion carries. Number 10 is approval, acceptance of donated and unclaimed property items left by inmates leaving Brazos County Detention Center for the following months.
Move for approval of the months August through December, A through E.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None motion carries. Number 11 is approval of requested from the Brazos County Historical Commission Chairman for the following historical markers at the courthouse.
Move for approval A through C.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Discussion, and Henry, you want to come up and? Hey, Randy.
Thank you, Judge and Commissioners. Henry Mayo, Brazos County Historic Commission Chairman, and former Commission member Randy Haynes, who was applicant on one of these markers. So, yeah, now, these are for 2 new markers that was no cost to the county. The state actually gave us these, and one of them, John Mitchell marker, is he was in the Reconstruction Legislature back in 1860s, and the state has approved 23 of those through a Senate bill from the 88th legislature 3 years ago. So they gave us one to put up at the courthouse, requested by the Historic Commission, Texas Historic Commission. The other, John N. Mitchell, was applied for by Randy through the THC's Undertold Markers program. So the state pays for markers that meet certain criteria. And I'll let you, Randy, talk a little about the subject of that marker.
Actually, Randy Haynes, guest from Grimes County. John Johnson was actually one of the first civil rights attorneys in Texas. In the late 1870s, he came to Texas. He was a teacher for a while, and he studied law. He applied to be accepted to the Bar Association a couple of times, was declined in Brazos County, and then accepted in Travis County. He sued the Houston and Texas Central Railroad based on a 14th Amendment argument that black people had to pay the same amount to ride the train as white people, but they got to ride in a boxcar instead of a chair. And he didn't think that was too cool. He actually lost the case, but he negotiated a settlement with the railroad. Later on, there was a situation where a man was transporting some melons, a man and his friend, and a man started shooting at him because they came across his property. They got mad about that. They went and got a gun. They returned fire after they'd been shot at a second time, and they wounded the fellow that started shooting at him. Well, the guy that was shooting at him was a white guy, and these 2 guys were black guys. And in Brazos County in those days, it was a miracle they lived more than a day or 2. But they were arrested, they were tried, they were both sentenced to death, and Mr. Johnson appealed the case to the Texas Supreme Court. And he actually got one man's sentence overturned, and the other man commuted from death to life in prison. And what struck me about this fellow was his bravery in doing this, because in those days in our community, you didn't have a lot of folks standing up for that population. So there was a man named John Browning, who's a judge up in Dallas, who had done most of the research on this, so it was easy for me. I didn't have to do a lot of work, but I did go out and get the state of Texas money for this marker, and I think it's appropriate that it be here in front of our Brazos County Courthouse, because this is where he started this practice, and it's historic in the whole state of Texas. And I'll also say that these historic markers are publicized all over the United States. They're software apps that, people actually tour around and watch for historic markers. So every time you get one, you can consider that a little bit of it's a public asset. People want to come see this stuff. And so I appreciate the fact that I was allowed to, the judge supported this 5 years ago, and I kind of had forgotten that we did it. And they finally, we've been through COVID, they lost the company that cast the markers for a while, and so it's been a while. So thanks for listening to me.
And these are very appropriate for Black History Month, this month too.
You hear that, Fred? The state's gonna give something to us.
Yes, that's very nice, very good. Just as a side note, Randy Haynes and I worked together for 17 years in the car business, and he's one of the finest people I've ever known. So, Randy, so good to see you.
See, and I worked with Randy in the City of Bryan business, and I would echo, fine,
Yeah.
and drove a snazzy car.
Yeah.
All right, because of Fred, I'll tell you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
Henry. Thanks,
Thank you
Henry.
very much for that acknowledgement.
And we have a motion and a second, correct?
Yes, sir.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None motion carries.
Judge, I know we're coming up to the noon hour. I wasn't sure if the court was going to recess, but I did want to make the court aware that for 34A, one of the issues, we do have an outside attorney here. If the court was inclined to recess, if we could take that matter up before we actually do recess.
So, do you think it'd be appropriate to skip down to, I mean,
I know in the past we've switched it up for these purposes, so I do believe it would be appropriate under the circumstances.
okay, since we have an attorney that will be speaking in one of the executive sessions, and since it is 11:54 right now, we're gonna skip down to the executive session at 34 and convene an executive session. And which one is that? A?
So is it your suggestion that we handle 34A and then come back in a regular session?
And
Come back in
recess until 1:30 or something, and then come back and hit finish the agenda up.
What would y'all think about doing 34A in executive and coming back and continuing on with the meeting?
And then recess until 1:30.
I mean, we can do that.
If the court,
Till 1:30.
whatever the
And
court.
it's gonna be we got a pretty long executive session once we get through with that, so, yeah. Well,
That's fine, Judge.
so we're gonna skip down to number 34A, and convene executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, and consult with an attorney pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offer. And I didn't have a list of who needed to come.
In this one, we, Jennifer Salazar, Rayana McConaughey, Emily Green, and Ed Bull and Aubrey Leggett.
Okay. And the time is 11:55. Okay, we're coming out of executive session. It is 12:09. There's no action to be taken from the executive session, and we're gonna recess until 1:30 to come back and finish up the agenda.
Oh, okay. All righty.